Indian Prime Minister Modi will hold his bilateral meeting shortly with Russian President Vladimir Putin. The Prime Minister and President shared a car while traveling for their bilateral meet. Earlier at the SCO summit, Vladimir Putin defended his Ukraine offensive, blaming the West for triggering the 3.5-year conflict that has killed tens of thousands and devastated much of eastern Ukraine. He also added the second reason for the crisis is the West's constant attempts to drag Ukraine into NATO.
This crisis wasn't triggered by Russia's attack on Ukraine, but was a result of a coup in Ukraine, which was supported and provoked by the West.
And joining me live from Tianjin at the heart of the summit is our Assistant Director for Foreign Affairs, Siddhant Sibal. Siddhant, huge diplomatic win for India. This is, of course, regarding the Pahalgam terror attack. Give us more.
Well, significant development, both in terms of the Indian Prime Minister referring it during his statement, but also the joint statement referring the Pahalgam terror attack. Now, just to give a context, just 2 months ago, the Indian Defence Minister had opted out of the statement, the SCO statement, because of no mention of the Pahalgam terror attack. And fast forward 2 months later, the leader's joint statement mentions the terror attack, and of course a substantive mention of how terrorism is a scourge and countries in the region need to fight it. Now, on the Pahalgam terror attack issue, this is not the first grouping that has attacked, condemned the terror attack. We have seen previously the Quad, the BRICS, and now the SCO joining the list of groupings condemning the terror attack that shocked India and the world as well. India, of course, launched this Operation Sindoor, the counter-terror operation inside Pakistan. And we also know that when it comes to the Pahalgam terror attack, India has been highlighting the worries over cross-border terrorism. In fact, yesterday, in response to a WION question, the Indian Foreign Secretary pointed out that the matter related to cross-border terrorism was raised with the Chinese President Xi Jinping, and India got assurances on that. Indian Prime Minister, of course, earlier today, during his statement, asked member countries to shun double standards, and he was making his elaborate statement on the issue of counter-terrorism, on the issue of cross-border terrorism, in the presence of Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. Clear message to the Pakistani side in presence of other SCO leaders. But clearly, the big mantra from the Indian side when it comes to SCO, which was given by the Indian Prime Minister, was security, connectivity, and opportunity. That basically forms the acronym SCO.
Yes, Siddhant, also, the images that quite clearly are also going viral at this point of Prime Minister Modi and President Putin sitting and sharing that car ride. What kind of messaging do you think is going out over there?
Well, first thing, the bilateral is all set to start between the two leaders, between the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Russian President Vladimir Putin. Focus on several things: energy, on defense, on trade, India's concerns on trade deficit, but convergences between two countries, a steady relationship, and of course those visuals catching the eye, both the leaders in the same car. Now, interestingly, everyone is going to, of course, talk about similar such car movement between the Russian president and the US President Donald Trump at the Alaska summit. Clear resemblance in many ways. Alaska, it is not having much of a success so far. It's been 2 weeks at least. But this is a relationship that not only has success, but a lot of dividends for each other.
Siddhant, thanks so much for getting us the latest. We'll, of course, come back to you as there'll be more to discuss after the bilateral is done between the two leaders from India and Russia. That was our Assistant Director for Foreign Affairs, bringing us all the latest from Tianjin. And for more on this, I'm now being joined live by Dr. Andrew Freris, CEO of Ecognosis Advisory Limited. Dr. Freris, thanks so much for joining us here on Newspoint. Very quickly, the Chinese president, he's criticized the bully behavior in the world order. Russian president has pretty much come out and called it the West's fault that Ukraine has suffered the kind of damage in the last 3.5 years. And the Indian Prime Minister has put out photographs which would have really resonated in Washington, D.C. How do you feel the West would be responding over here, and what kind of signaling is going out?
I'm afraid the West should be completely indifferent to all this because it was completely expected. Everybody blames everybody else. Okay, Putin blames the West, India blames Pakistan. It may very well be true. I'm not for one moment suggesting that this is untrue. But
proof is there, very much there, so yes.
Hang on a minute. Isn't it interesting that instead of talking about cooperation, everybody's blaming everybody else about potential violence? Okay, my advice to anybody listening to that is to take this away, that the only way you're going to get yourself heard in this world is if you are well armed. If you are not well armed, nobody pays any attention to you. Absolutely. So India should take this away, come back home, and spend more than ever money on defense. I'm sorry, it's a very crude and very realistic situation. Otherwise, the blah, blah things about greater cooperation, understanding with each other, of course they will say that. Nobody's coming to come out and says that India and China will continue to fight over the border dispute. Of course not. But I would like to know is how they're going to resolve it. I haven't heard anything about that.
No, I hear your point. I take your point. And of course, there is a history there. It has not been great. But at this point, the reset in ties, it seems to be in full swing. What happens next is going to answer that lingering question at this point that, okay, what next? But as far as the joint declaration is concerned, or all the optics that are surrounding this place is concerned, I'm going to come back to kind of circle back to, do you feel this is going to make Trump ease off in the manner that he has been posing sanctions and tariffs? Or do you feel it's going to crack down on it even more?
Let me make this incredibly clear. The results and consequences of the SCO meeting for the West and for the members are zero. Okay, zero. It's just blah, blah. Thank you very much. We all joined together. We condemned everybody else. We condemned each other. We agree that we're going to cooperate further. And Trump, it will come from one ear and straight out of the other. He will continue to do whatever he's doing. And unfortunately, he's very inconsistent. So I'm not going to tell you that suddenly he's not going to change his mind about that.
So you're expecting more tariffs? You're expecting more tariffs to come in and him continuing the way he's going till now?
I'm sorry, I'm going to sound like an economist. I could be expecting more tariffs and less tariffs. You know, the policy of United States concerning tariffs has nothing to do with economics and everything to do with politics. So in other words, he's not going to look at inflation numbers or GDP numbers and they will say, I'm going to change my mind over that. Absolutely not.
Yes, and Dr. Freris, it was just barely about 15, 16 days back that we saw that Alaska summit, all those handshakes and, all those smiles between Putin and Trump. There was to be a meeting between Putin and Zelensky. There is no word on that as of now. Russia has their reservations, and then there was going to be a trilateral. All that seems to be in air at this point. Do you feel there is anything which is from what's happened in the SCO which is going to reflect on that?
Zero. I would like to go down for posterity that the war in Ukraine is going to finish through violence. In other words, somebody will have to win over others. And Ukraine should hear that very, very clearly. The European Union is now planning to bring in troops inside Ukraine. In other words, people woke up to the fact, well, this is not going to be solved by negotiation. It is not, and it will not, and it cannot. So the Alaska meeting is of no consequence whatsoever. The SCO meeting is very nice, as I said, for a public PR performance, all very good, okay, but the actual practical consequences and results are zero.
All right, loud and clear, Ms. Dr. Perez. Thanks so much for joining us and making your points absolutely clear. What you feel about it, of course, times to come will answer whether you're right or whether we need to look at something else at this point. Thanks so much, Dr. Perez, joining us from Hong Kong.